Hello, my little toads. Grammy here with chapter 4 of Soup on Ice. Today we meet this guy here. Doesn't look too friendly, does he? Let's find out who he is. That's it, said Soup, our last sidewalk. It was only the middle of the afternoon, yet my back was starting to feel as though we'd been shoveling snow since early July. Leaning against my shovel, I let out a big sigh. We'd cleared 11 sidewalks. I felt even more tired when I noticed that Soup appeared to be fresher than morning. Edging, I concluded, was lighter than shoveling. Let's go home, Soup. It'll be time for chores, and I can't afford to miss those, not this close to Christmas and a possible BB gun. We divided our change into equal shares, half for my shoveling, half for Soup's edging, coaching, and counting. In other words, he really didn't do anything, did he? But I kept Miss Witherspoon's quarter. He grinned. Rob, old top, I know the very thing to brighten our sagging winter spirits, Soup said as he pocketed his take. A slide down, or he said, well, what's that? A slide down the double zoomer, said Soup. Come on, I'll race you to the bottom. Parking our shovels in a mound of snow at the village square, Soup and I took ourselves a long running start, hit the ice, and down the hill we slid, standing up and side by side on the twin tracks of polished ice. We slid all the way down and then coasted to a stop on the ice of the lake. Wow, I said, the ice on the double zoomer seems to freeze faster every year. As we stood on the frozen surface of Lake Champlain, Soup looked north. That's because of the north wind, Pa says. He claims the wind is stiffer this December. I couldn't argue. Looking north toward Canada, I had to blink my eyes as the wind was really whipping our way. I'm cold, Soup. Let's get going home. We collected our 2 shovels and started to leave downtown the back way along the railroad track. The houses nearby looked more than shabby. Most of them were shacks of unpainted wood with no curtains in the windows, and some of the windows were covered over with rectangles of black tar paper. None of the crusty doors sported even as much as a Christmas wreath. Soup pointed at one of the shacks. I know who lives there. So do I said. The Tidwells. But just Allie and his ma, Soup said. I happened to overhear Pa tell Ma that Allie's father, Jack Tidwell, left and ran away. His ma is sickly, but she takes in washing when she's able. As Soup spoke, I stared at the Tidwell place. Their shack looked in worse shape than all the others. Seeing it made me realize why Allie Tidwell didn't believe much in Santa Claus or Christmas. Looking at his beat-up house, I wondered how Allie could believe in anything at all except poverty. Soup was quiet for once, and I had the hunch that he was thinking about Allie too and how poor the Tidwells really were. We headed for home. Below us lay the railroad tracks in a deep gully with ledges like steps on either side. We were now 2 ledges above the train tracks. Looking down, I spotted 2 people, a grown-up and a kid, carrying a sack. Bending over, they picked up lumps of coal that had tumbled from the tender, the coal bin that rode behind the locomotive. Along the tracks, black hunks of coal freckled the gray, dirty snow. Hey, said Soup, it's Allie and his ma. His voice softened. I don't guess the Tidwells can afford to buy any fuel to burn to keep warm. Before I could answer, I saw 2 more people. They stood on a ledge below us, off to our left, but above where Allie and Mrs. Tidwell hunted for the coal. They were kids who had also spotted the Tidwells. It was Eddie Tacker and Janice Riker. Neither one had seen Soup or me. They were throwing hard hunks of snow down at Allie and his mother. One of the chunks of snow hit Mrs. Tidwell, and Allie put his arm around her. As the Tidwells ran toward their shack, Soup picked up snow to help Allie and his ma. I did too. Maybe we could help them get away safely. We could easily outrun the 2 others. Neither Soup or I got to throw even 1 hunk of snow at Janice or Eddie because a big voice suddenly boomed, "Hey, you!" And then I'll show you. this is how you write a swear word in a book without actually writing it. Just all kinds of stuff. So when this guy is swearing in this book, let's see, how will we say it? Hey, you kids. I don't know. Hey, you darn kids. Soup and I looked around to see an enormous man who was cussing and chasing Janice and Eddie away. He stood on the ledge above them near where we stood. Seeing both Eddie and Janice turn tail and run made me smile. I recognized the man who'd run them off. Everyone in town knew them. His name was Stanley Dubinsky, but folks all called him Slosh. He was the owner of Slosh's Hot Time Pool Parlor. People said that Slosh weighed almost 300 pounds and stood near 6.5 feet tall. To me, he looked even bigger. Mr. Dubinsky was still cussing at Janice and Eddie. Beat it! Ain't you doggone kids got no sense of what's decent? Get the heck out of here! Eddie and Janice fled for their lives. But then the worst happened. Turning, Mr. Dubinsky spotted Soup and me, holding the hunks of snow that we had intended to use against Eddie and Janice, to be on the Tidwell side. Mr. Dubinsky's face turned even redder. Hey, how come all you darn kids gotta act so darn mean? He headed our way, snarling. Run, said Soup. I tried, but my feet wouldn't budge even an inch. Soup couldn't run either. Meanwhile, Mr. Slosh Dubinsky was smoking our way, looking taller and fatter and meaner with every step. As he came closer, it was impossible to believe that Slosh was only one individual. Actually, he didn't look like a person. He looked more like the size of a refrigerator. As he stopped and stared down at Soup and me, everything I had ever heard about Mr. Slosh Dubinsky came suddenly to mind. Folks claimed he had stopped wrestling because he'd broken the bones and mashed the noses of too many other guys. Rumor had it that his parents had been a grizzly bear and a bulldozer. He now stood directly before us, still cussing, his kneecap almost as high as my chin. His white beard shook with outrage. A giant paw reached out to seize the front of my coat, and suddenly my feet no longer rested in snow. Soup was being held thusly in the air by my side. Shame on you two boys, Mr. Dubinsky growled, throwing snow down at poor people who's picking up coal. As his talons released us, Soup and I fell, landing in the crusty snow. High above me, all I could see was a pair of bright blue eyes, a great white beard, and a nose that only a violent temper could have reddened to the hue of a tail light. We didn't do it, Soup said weakly. No, I croaked. We were going to help the Tidwells, honest. We're in school with Allie. He's our friend, said Soup. Mr. Dubinsky hauled in a long, filling breath and then let out in a blast that seemed more like a steamy gale. Are you blankety-blank kids telling me the blankety-blank truth? He roared at us. Soup and I both nodded, again informing Mr. Dubinsky that we were intending to help Allie and his mother escape from Janice and Eddie. Allie doesn't have any friends, Soup said, except for Rob and me. We aren't ashamed to be his pals. We're proud of it, I said. Right then I saw a sight I'd never seen before, and it would be an experience I'd remember even if I lived to turn older than Miss Witherspoon. Slosh Dubinsky smiled. And that's the end of chapter 4.